honor and a privilege to have you on here. I don't know if you know much about me or our community. We're a bunch of community of dedicated meat eaters. We have used meat-based diets, many people to cure a lifetime chronic disease. We think it's a superfood. And so we're very supportive of meat, and we're very appreciative of the people that allow us to do that. And it's guys like you and others that produce the food that we get our sustenance and our health from. So first of all, just in general terms, I've been interviewing and talking a lot about regenerative agriculture for the last several years. Alan Savory, Joel Salatin, on and on. I've interviewed most of those guys. And one of the names that kept coming up is you got to interview Greg Judy. He's doing so much good work. And I popped in and checked out your YouTube channel, and you're kind of for a lot of people, it seems like you're like the go-to, the how to get it done job. Because, a lot of us, myself included, I'm 53. I'm thinking, man, in 10 years, I want to go start a damn ranch, and just dig it all in. How am I going to do it? So that's what I'm excited about. So first of all, for those that aren't familiar with all your background, or at least a decent amount of your background, would you mind giving us a little bit of background?
Yes. So basically, we ranch here in central Missouri. I've been doing, you might say, regenerative ranching since about 1999, 2000. So we've been doing this quite a while. I started out, Shawn, doing things conventional, and things didn't go so well for me. And so I started focusing on the soils, building healthy soils, making sure our animals have a really good diet every day on, green, fresh, lush pasture every day, and just leaving all the inputs and the metal and all the chemicals and all this crap they tell us we need to do for our farm. We just follow nature. And so we try and manage our farm in sync with nature. And things have started going really well for us.
Yeah, I want to just, there's a little parallel there because, they tell us to do this, and a lot of times some companies that are going to make a lot of money when you spend money on herbicides and the pesticides and you invest in the big machinery that it requires. And when you look at the results, and we're seeing the same thing, kind of a parallel in the nutrition world. They say you need to eat this, and this, and we're saying, wait a minute, we're not doing that. Healthy. So there's a very direct parallel with that. But, the conventional system, and as I understand it, obviously there's lots of ways to farm, and, it's hard to say, there's this and that. There's a lot of gray areas and differences and nuance there, as I'm sure you're aware. But, one of the things, I guess, and a lot of people like to vilify the CAFOs or the CAFOs, and I think there's good reasons to do that. But some people say, well, it was a response in industry. If you listen to NCBA or some of the big beef companies, they'll say, well, it was industry's response to the claims that, we've got too many animals on the ground, too much methane, too much water, too much land usage. And they will point to their record saying, look, we're making just as much or more beef with less animals now. We're shooting out less methane. We're using less water. But it's more nuanced than that, as you're aware. So you're in this convention. When did you make that switch from, hey, and why do you feel it wasn't working for you? Where was the point where you said, this is not right for me?
Shawn, it just all comes back to the animals and the wildlife, your soils, your environment. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to go out and look at my cows and tell me that they have a very, very good life. And if your animal, you eat what your animals eat. And so if your animals are eating compromised food, you're eating that same animal that ate that compromised food. And to me, we have a health issue problem here in the United States today. And it's because we're eating food that doesn't have any nutrient density to it. And it's been washed out. And so, we look at what wasn't working for me was, at the end of the day, believe it or not, there wasn't any money left. There's no money left. And the input people that you talked about, they're still preaching it today. You got to kill everything. Kill it, kill it, kill it. Well, at the end of the day, who makes all the money on killing things? I'm talking about, weeds and you name it, wildlife you don't want or whatever. And so we found that the more we manage in sync and watch the animals, they'll tell you what they need. But we are such a hectic, fast-paced society today that we're not listening to the animals anymore. And our animals live an awesome life. And they get moved every day, twice a day, morning and night. to fresh green pasture. And people say, but Greg, why aren't you giving them all these chemicals and shooting them up with antibiotics and this vaccine and that vaccine? Is because our animals aren't sick. They're not sick. Can you imagine that, Shawn?
Yeah, and that's a great point. You know, why are you giving people medicine when they're not sick? You know, again, there's the same analogy here with people taking supplements and all that stuff. Why? If you're eating the right stuff. My question, I guess, well, you know, I'm sure you're familiar with a guy named Alan Williams. I think he's with Joyce Farms, maybe. I think he's down in Alabama or something like that. Maybe you know Alan's work. So I've interviewed Alan, and one of the things he stated was, you know, if we could convert X amount of our pasture in the U.S. To, you know, if you want to call it regeneratively raised or adaptive multi-paddock grazing, holistic management, you know, there's all kinds of names for it, as I'm sure you're aware.
Right.
And that's one of the problems when you look at the literature and you try to look at the stuff. People will type in, you know, this method, and it's really listed onto something else. So you got to know how to look in the literature. And I've read a lot of the agricultural literature as a physician, which I have no real, you know, I had no real reason to read other than a pure interest in this stuff, and it's fascinating. But what Alan Williams was saying is, I think he quoted me when I interviewed him. He said, if we can get like 30 to 40% of the land turned into regenerative land, we would completely offset all the carbon emissions in the United States from all industries. That's including, you know, oil, gas, you know, energy sector, industrial sector. The question that then immediately comes up is that plausible? And then when I'm talking, and as I know you work with people from, I imagine, all parts of the country, even around the world, perhaps, with all kinds of different unique challenges. You know, raising cattle in desert Southwest, you know, southern Arizona is going to be different than raising it up in upstate New York with rainfall and you know, the available pasture. Can we convert a significant percentage, not 100%, because I think 100%, whenever you say you got to do it 100%, I kind of laugh, but can we convert a significant percentage of our 700,000 plus ranchers to your style of agriculture? Can we do it? Is it financially viable? Can we produce enough meat doing it that way? What are your thoughts on that?
Shawn, first of all, if you look at all the arable land in the United States, well, even in just the whole world, the land that's being cropped today, it's all the good land. It's got the deeper topsoils on it. The cattle are running on the scrub land that is not conducive to raising crops. If you converted that land that's growing, let's say 250 bushel of corn per acre, and put grass on it, put animals on there, my gosh, they could look at the cows would look at the grass and get fat. I mean, that's how good that grass would be. To give you an example, where I'm at in the Rolling Hills of Missouri, we've got about 2 to 4 inches of topsoil. If you go 5 miles east of me, they've got topsoil on the prairie out there that's 3 feet deep. Okay, there's no livestock out there. It's all corn, soy, corn, soy, corn, soy. And to me, it's just ridiculous to say that we can't raise enough animals this way. We absolutely can. I mean, we've doubled our stocking rate using what we call, you know, adaptive. Some people call it adaptive grazing, mob grazing, holistic grazing. Basically, we're focusing on increasing the stock and density of our animals and moving them. And so we're using the manure and the pee and the trampling effect of that big mob to build more soil and grow more grass without buying more land.
Yeah, there's a comment here by a guy named Stephen Swick who goes by regenerative. He's incredibly knowledgeable. He might even know him, but he's incredibly knowledgeable about this whole way we raise animals and we produce food. But one of the points he makes as another reason for adapting the CAFOs was consistency. They know they can scientifically say, we know if we give these guys this, you know, this total mixed ration of blah, blah, blah over a certain period of times, we can get them fat and ready by market 16, 18 months consistently. And one of the criticisms about grass finished is, hey man, you may not get the product you want. It's harder to get them fat enough. Do you find that if you can, and again, when I look at grass finishing, as you know, there's a difference between what you're doing with mob grazing and traditional grass finishing, where you just put them out to pasture and say, you guys go eat, and we'll see you in 28, 30 months and then harvest you, and we may or may not get a good product.
That's right.
What is the difference in the quality of the food, the marbling? Because, you know, a lot of us appreciate fat on our meat, and not everybody's scared of fat here. And so how do you find that if I can you said you can double your stocking rate, which indicates you've got better forage, you've got better pasture, you've got more energy in your fields. Can you consistently say, I'm going to get this product, and can that be scaled to more and more people where you can say, hey, grass finishing doesn't have to be super lean and chewy, and it can be, you know, marbled and, you know, a
Yes.
consistent finish, I guess.
Well, here's the issue, Sean. A lot of people early on in the grass-fed meat business, you know, they heard, oh, the consumer wants a lean meat. And so, you know, they're butchering these animals before they were ever finished. If you look at them, they didn't have any fat on them. They were lean, and they had a lot of lean meat on them, but there was no grass fat on them at all. And so when you start butchering animals like that and giving it to the consumer, they're like, well, my goodness, Sean, that's like chewing on a shoe sole. I can't eat that. And so you've got to get the proper finish on them. So your fellow was exactly right. You've got to, you know, it's going to be a process of getting people schooled to learn how to finish animals on grass. And here's the big missing component. Well, there's several, but I'm going to name one. That is, we've got the wrong genetics. We have been taught and taught and taught to get them big, get them big, get them big, get the cows big. And the reason they want them big is the packers, they want a, you know, 1,600-pound finished steer because they can get them up on that chain in that packing plant, and they can cut those things and cut them and cut them. And not only that, when they're in the feedlot, they can feed them. They can feed them a ton of corn. And feedlots are in the business of feeding corn, not putting on weight. They get paid to feed corn. And so a cow that finishes at 1,000 pounds, they don't want those. They don't want those cows. They want the, you know, 14, 15, 1,600-pound steers, because the biggest cost in a feedlot is getting the animal straightened out. In other words, they buy in a 400 to 600, 800-pound calf. They've got to give it this whole regiment of shots to get them where they don't get sick. And then they need to feed them. They need to feed them a ton of corn. And so the genetics on grass, I really believe we need to keep those animals somewhere between 1,000 to 1,200 pounds. If you get a 1,600-pound cow out on grass, you're not going to be able to get enough grass in her to get her fat. Are you following me?
No, absolutely. Yeah, I totally get that. I interviewed a guy named Glenn Elzinga a while back. He's up at Alder Spring Ranch up in Idaho. He's up in the mountains, and he's doing similar. And you may know Glenn, I don't know, but he's telling me he can get 4 pounds a day of gain, and his animals eating this mixed pastured forage of, you know, whatever, you know, it's the grasses and it's the flowers. I mean, they have a big variety, and so he's rivaling feedlot numbers on pasture. So it's certainly doable depending on where you're at, I believe.
Well, here's the deal. I don't think in the future we keep going toward this feedlot model. And I'm not going to say we're just going to eliminate feedlots. It's not going to happen, I don't think. But if we could reduce those numbers and get them back out on the land, we have a water infiltration problem here in the United States. We do. I mean, we get tons of rain, but we don't keep it. It all runs into the ocean. And that's because we don't have any organic matter left in our soils because of all the cropping systems, and even grazing. Continuous grazing is not good. I mean, you look at a field that's been continuously grazed down to dirt, get a rainfall on that, it ends up in the creek too. So I think we need to get more trampling, more organic matter built, complements of animals, a ruminant grazing animal, capture this rainwater, keep it on our landscape, grow more grass, make a better living, get more people out on the land. The trend is to get bigger or get out. And we've been toward that trend a long time. If you go out in the country now, the country's bare. There's no farmers out here. I mean, there's these great big ones, and a lot of them are owned by corporations. I think we need to get family farmers back on the land and growing healthy food for our communities. And this recent COVID thing, I mean, you go and try and get an animal butchered today. It showed a weakness in our food system. I mean, when they shut down those big packing plants, there wasn't any meat. There's no meat. So all the little packing plants are booked now for a full year. A full year. You can't get an animal in to get them butchered because everybody's trying to get animals butchered today.
Yeah, that's clearly an issue, and I've interviewed a guy named Mike Calicrate, who you may also know. He's got direct to ranch.
I know him.
He's trying to help. He's trying to help with some of that situation. We're seeing more and more ranchers that are learning direct to consumer is beneficial, and we certainly are. You know, on our site we list hundreds of folks that do that. We're really trying to encourage that as a way, because I, like you know, we see the bottleneck at the Packers and we see the monopoly, you know, NCBA, in my view, largely as a Packer organization. Just looking at it as a complete outsider, having talked to enough ranchers, to see that there is this definite, disconnect between, how ranchers get paid and where the money is, which is in the retail and the packing side.
Yes.
And so it's very unfortunate the guys
Yes.
are taking all the risk and doing all the work, or not all, but a hard. I mean, you are assuming basically all of the risk, with what you do. But not getting that, I want to ask you, because this is, I do have a genuine interest in this. Say 10 years from now, Dr. Baker says, I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing. I want to go out and I just want to hang up my stethoscope or my business and go out and get me X amount of acres and some animals. What's the minimum I need to do to start? Can I do this with 10 acres and 4 animals, or is there a certain minimal threshold? How do you figure out to do this? Because there's people in this, I guarantee there's people in this meeting that they're going to do this, because a lot of us believe in this, and we really want to be able to, if nothing else, want to be able to support our own food because we're concerned about what's coming down the road. So what's the minimal buy-in on this?
Well, Shawn, we have a grazing school every year on our farm, and I usually have Ian Mitchell-Ennis from South Africa, which is a holistic grazer over there. He comes over and helps us each year. And we actually had a guy come to our grazing school many years ago, and he did it with one cow in his backyard. And he came to our conference and learned how to graze, learned how to build the trampoline, the rest periods, the recovery periods, animal performance, made sure the animal was gaining well. And he tied her to a rope, and he rotated her around his yard all year long. And he did a fantastic job, because he didn't come back to that circle until that grass was regrown. And it was this family milk cow. So he provided all the milk for his family just by moving that cow around his yard. One cow. He did high density grazing. So, but to answer your question a little bit more, let's say 5 acres, 10 acres, whatever, you've got to watch your rainfall. So in Arizona, you can't run one cow on, let's say, 4 acres in Arizona. In Missouri, where I'm at, that is our stocking rate for the county, about one cow per 4 acres. But that's because we get 38 inches of rain a year. In Arizona, what do they get? 6, 7 inches? So you've got to watch your rainfall. So I tell people this: if you're going to start a grazing business, go where it rains. Don't fight it. Don't go into a desert and try and set up a grass-finished beef operation. Everybody says, but Greg, I can water it. No, you can't. You can water it for a little while, but the cities are going to take that water. They're not going to allow you to pour water on the desert floor to grow grass for a cow. You can't do that. Go where it rains. There's lots of places in the United States where it rains. They get plenty of rainfall and they grow plenty of grass. Now that is regenerative. If you got to fire up a diesel engine to get a pump started to water your grass to feed a cow, that's not going to work, I don't think. So I would look at areas where they get rainfall, maybe stay out of the extreme winters. Up in Buffalo, New York, we had an intern, great gal. She was up there and she tried to do grass-finished beef. She was hard-headed. She stayed at it for 5-6 years. And she'd get 8 foot of snow up there, 8 feet. And she's trying to do grass-finished beef. You can't do that. So you've got to go where you get maybe a little bit more mild winters. You can take a couple feet of snow for a couple of weeks, but you don't want that all winter long. So animals can't graze when you get real deep snow. And so the most regenerative model that you can build on grazing, if you're starting out, Shawn, go where you can graze 365 days of the year. And if you can do that, you're going to do well. You're going to raise food for your family, good food, because the animals are out on the pasture. It's not going to take a lot of hay. You got to buy some hay for the winter, and maybe your grass isn't growing as well. The colder and deeper the snow, the more hay you have to feed. And that just sucks up your income.
Yeah, it makes sense. I guess make it easy on yourself,
Yep.
Well, let's talk a little bit about productivity yields. You said you've got double. I've seen some people say even higher numbers. What are the ranges? I mean, if let's just say you're wherever you are, whether you're in the desert or you're in Virginia or something like that, what are the range of numbers where you can expect to see an increased yield on your land typically? What have you seen?
Well, first of all, we started out just doing typical rotational grazing for many, many years. So we rotated the animals every couple, 3 days, maybe once a week. And we went to moving the animals twice a day and getting our stock and density. Now, there's a difference, Shawn, between stocking rate and stock and density. Stock and rate is the number of animals you have on your farm for 365 days, 1 year. Stock and density is how tight you put them. In other words, how many is on an acre or half an acre or a quarter acre, and how long did you leave them there? And this is where people have really boogered it up. They get this idea in their head, they know what mob grazing is, and they go out there and they put, 1,000,000 pounds of meat. Just do the math. 1,000,000 pounds, that'd be 1,000 animals that weighed 1,000 pounds, whatever. Do the math. And you put them on an acre and you leave them for half a day. That's not going to work. So you can expect to see within 2 to 3 years, you're going to be running probably 20, 30, maybe 40% more cows. Simply because the animals, when you put them in tighter, there's some data that's been done. It takes 27 years to cover every square foot of your farm with a manure pad with continuous grazing, or the Columbus method, where you turn them out in the spring, you discover them in the fall. We call that the Columbus method. When you move the animals every day, morning and night, like we're doing, where we got them stocked a lot tighter, and it ranges. I mean, our stock and densities go all over the place. It takes 3 years to cover every square foot of your farm with a manure pile. When you start doing that, you're going to start growing more grass, more earthworms, more microbes. It's a faster energy cycle. Your manure pats are breaking down quicker. You got more dung beetles, we've got birds. You wouldn't believe the birds we got out there. I mean, you better have a hat on when you go into our herd, because there's birds over the top. And they're going to be dropping poo on. I mean, there's thousands of them now, these cowbirds. And I love it. It's almost like the Serengeti. You go out there and you see these massive herds of birds over the wildebeest. We've got that going on.
And I've had the pleasure to go out in the Serengeti. It is truly majestic to see it out there. So let me ask you about, a lot of people are running, I don't know if you call this multi-species operations, where it's cows, it's chickens. What are your thoughts on that? Is that worth doing? Is that something that is it 2 + 2 = 5 in that situation, or is it 2 + 2 = 3?
Well, first of all, be careful. With multi-species, I love it. When we run that, we've got cattle and sheep. We've got the guard dogs in with our sheep. We used to have goats until they decided they wouldn't stay in. We got rid of the goats, but we run quite a few sheep. And the sheep and the cattle work really well together. And that's because they are a co-host for each other's parasites. So a sheep parasite can be ingested by a cow. It's a dead-end host. It can't complete its life cycle. The same way on the cow parasite ingested by the sheep. And the sheep eat different plants than the cows do. And I'll go this far. Sheep will make your cow pasture better. And that's because they remove the weeds, they remove the brambles. Cows won't touch that stuff. And so they actually will clean up a pasture and make it better for your cows as well. So you also got another product out there to sell or eat. Instead of just having beef, you've got some lamb now. And it's another market. I think we need multiple markets to sell into. And, pastured pigs, chickens, the whole 9 yards. But be careful. Starting out, I see this. I do consulting in all the United States, and I've been on a lot of farms. It's just a wreck. And you know why? They brought them all in at once. They started doing everything at the start. They didn't have any of it right. Find out what you love to do. If you love chickens, go for chickens, and then bring in a few cows to complement them, whatever. But you need to find out what the mothership is of your farm. What are you passionate about doing? What do you love when you wake up in the morning? That should be what you focus on. And then all these others should complement that.
So, and I guess that's going to depend on where you start your land. If you pick your plot of land out, some are going to be better for X, Y, or Z. Like I said, if you pick for cattle, like you said, where it rains, where there's grass, and then, and so what, just assuming let's say I love cows, because I like to eat them. And let's say I get 50 cows going, and, I've got enough land for that. At what point, do you say I'm gonna bring in sheep, and then how many? What's a ratio that worked? Are they 1 to 1? Is it 5 sheep to 1 cow? What's the ratio typically going to be?
Yeah, so the ratio is with hair sheep. Now we're going to talk about hair sheep because I don't run wool sheep. I don't have anything against wool sheep, but we just don't run them. We don't have any shears, anybody that will shear sheep anymore around here. And so we just run hair sheep. Hair sheep is a meat animal. That's all they're raised for, is for meat. And you can run about, our ewes will weigh about 120 to 130 pounds. And so you can run about 7 ewes for one 1,000-pound cow will eat. Okay. Now, Shawn, you're talking about these smaller acreages, people getting started. Sheep are a whole lot more complementary to smaller farms than cows are. Because think about it. Let's say you can run, let's just say you had 20 acres and you could run 4 cows on there. Okay, you're stocked. In other words, it took 5 acres to run 1 cow. Not the best of ground. What if you took those same 5 cows and replaced them with sheep? So now you're up to 5 times 7. You've got 35 ewes out there. And they're giving you twins. Okay, so they're getting 2. You're getting 2 back from those ewes. You can't do that with cattle. And with a sheep, you've got something to sell in 4 months. 4 months. Can't do that with cattle. So you can breed a ewe lamb at 7 months of age. You can turn a ram lamb into her, and she will breed, and she'll give you a baby when she turns 1 year old. And you've got something to sell 4 months later. You can't do that with cattle. So sheep are a lot more friendly for smaller acreages, I feel.
Yes, that's great information there. And what about pigs? Can pigs go in there too?
Pigs, if you want pasture, we always ran pigs in the woods, and we didn't run any this year. We had a couple that actually lived. We bought them a farm down the road, and they were running pigs, and they moved to Tennessee, but we're not running pigs now. But the pigs we ran them in the timber. When they got out in the pastures, you didn't have any cattle pasture left. They're rooters. They go after the worms. They root for the grubs, the roots of the plants. They turn that stuff. Now, in the summertime, they didn't turn it too bad. But if you've got pigs out on cattle pasture in the spring, and it's raining every day, you're not going to have any grass left. They will absolutely root that whole farm up. Now, you can ring them. You can put a ring in their nose, and that'll definitely help.
Talk to me about some of the technical stuff, because obviously moving the cows, and I know you're a big fan of electrified wire fences and stuff like that. Is there some technology that's out there, or do you foresee being more technology coming? Maybe somehow, is it possible to somehow automate some of this stuff? Are those things? Well, let's talk about your day to day. How do I move 1,000 cattle or 500 cattle or 50 cattle twice a day or once a day? That's obviously got to require some kind of, you just don't blow into a whistle and they come. I don't think, but how do you make that happen?
Yeah, they do. No, you can do that. Yeah, I just let out a war whoop. I can do my war whoop if you want, but I let out a war whoop and they're there. I mean, they're there like that. It does take training, Shawn. Usually cows are trained to electricity in about 4 to 5 days. And the key to it is make sure you use good products, high tensile, galvanized, 12 gauge, 180 to 200,000 PSI wire. That should be your perimeter fence. Don't monkey around with anything else. Make sure you have a good perimeter fence. And I'm talking, with sheep and cattle, probably 5 wires minimum, 5 hot wires, okay? And then on the interior, this is where I really messed up starting out, and I'm going to share this with you all today. Don't go out and put in a ton of infrastructure, fences in the middle of your farm. Not immediately. Don't do that. Use this poly braid they have today. There's a poly braid that's got 9 steel filaments in it, and it's the size of fishing line. It's triple the size of braided line like you fish with. But it's electrified, and you can roll it up. And so you can put this line out wherever you want and move your animals across your landscape, and you don't have all this infrastructure in place, because you may put in some fence interiors and it's not where you want it. You didn't find that out until after you grazed it. Like, oh my goodness, now I got to go rip it out. So don't put it in until you kind of figure out how you want to graze it, And then maybe you can put in a few interior paddocks, but don't put in a bunch. So you got good poly braid. Your charger is critical. Don't go down to your local mom and pop store and buy a charger. Get you a good one. And there's several out there. Cyclops, Speedrite, Gallagher. Those are the three that come to the top of my mind. Those are really good chargers. Don't go buy a really cheap charger because your animals will get out. If they don't get hit, Shawn, if you reach out and touch the wire and there's 8,000 volts in there, you're going to remember that. And you're probably not going to be so anxious to do that again. So, yeah.
Yeah, when I lived a little while in New Zealand, and there were a lot of sheep everywhere. Everybody had them in their damn yard running around. I mean, because they got 3 million people and 60 million sheep in that country. But back when I was there in the 1990s, and I remember I was playing basketball, and they had a paddock next to me, and my leg grazed against one of those things. And yeah, you don't forget it. It's like, wow, okay, that reminds me. So average ranch in the U.S. about 50 head of cattle, somewhere 40, 50 head of cattle. I mean, that's a pretty typical size from what I understand, the most cow-calf operations. If I got something like that and I'm doing it regenerative style, and again, it's obviously going to depend on where I am, but average size paddock, acreage, how much of a spot am I going to need, and how long is it going to take me to put up and put down those electric fences on a day? How much time am I looking at to do that once you get it down, I suppose?
Yeah, so once you get it down, Shawn, I have many videos on my YouTube channel, Greg Judy Regenerative Rancher, how we do our fencing, and we've got it down. And of course, I do have 2 interns that we take on internships here every year, and we get those young men jobs when they leave here. But I've got it down. And we put in all the paddocks typically like on a Monday morning for most of the week. And it takes us, maybe 3 hours. So the rest of the week, all we do is go out there and roll a wire up. You're not out there for hours. I mean, I worked 40 hours a week in town. I used to. And I did that for many years. And I ran these cattle on the side. I had 3 herds. I moved them morning and night, working in town. And what I did, I'd go out on Saturday or Sunday afternoon. I put in all my paddocks for the week. So when I got off work, all I had to do was roll up a wire. That's what I did. And it worked. But here's the big one. Don't have a bunch of herds. Have one. The more herds you have, here's what it kills you, Shawn. The more herds you have, you get around your farm too quickly. You're grazing it all off. You're grazing the roots off your farm. You need minimal groups of animals on your farm. And that way you have more rest periods. So when it gets hot and dry, your plants have a chance to grow back between grazings.
Besides moving obviously you got to water them, and I know you talk about the necessity of those animals having water when you built in your grazing plan, I suppose. And how do you?
Yes.
You have do you make like a little corridor that goes to the watering hole or the watering trough or the watering whatever you have? Is that something that's built in and you feed them into that? How do you keep them watered?
Yeah, so the watering issue is huge. And, animals typically are 75 to 80% water. And so it is one of the most important functions that you have on your farm. Give them quality water. Don't let your animals drink compromised water. They're not going to perform as well. And the smaller the animals are, the higher the quality they need. A baby goat is the most pickiest of all the animals there is. He's got to have drinking water like you and I drink, or he's not going to drink it. An old cow, they're a little bit more forgiving, but we use ponds. We have ponds that we build around our various farms. We have 16 farms now, and of those, 12 are leased. So we're always looking for the next new pond site. And so when our cows generate some money we have a pond account. So we sell an animal, a percentage of that goes into our pond account. And when the cows generate enough money to build another pond, we'll build one. Now we can build a pond for about $1,200 to $1,500. That's not very big. I'm talking maybe 60 feet across, 8 foot deep. We don't need a pond you can ski on, okay? You just need one that'll hold water for livestock. And we don't let the animals in the pond. If you build one, don't let them in there. You would be surprised. You drive around the country and everybody's ponds, they're full of cattle. They're like hippopotamuses out there. They don't belong in there. They're pooping and peeing in there, and then they're drinking it. That's nasty.
How do you keep them out? What do you get? How do you keep them out of
You
there?
put a poly wire. Those little poly wires I was telling you about. We like to fish. Okay, we love fishing. So all of our ponds are stocked. We got nice big fish in them. So we put a poly wire around the edge of the pond on the ponds that don't have a pipe in them. We build a brand new pond. There's a pipe in it. We run a 2.5 to 3 inch pipe in the bottom of the dam. So when the pond fills up, we can put a tank out at the back. Just fence the pond that way, and the cows can't even get in it. Because they will.
Okay.
They'll climb in there on a hot day.
And then they'll drink out of something. They won't drink directly out of the pond then if it can't get in, obviously.
If they can't get in it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and this is a question, and Phil reminded me of this. You said big cows, the big giant Angus, the 1,600 pound, whatever, 1,100 pound hanging weights or whatever they have. I've seen you talk about short leg cows and different breeds that are better for this style. And he's asking about specifically, I guess, midget cows, but talk about cattle breeding that maybe is best conducive to your style of ranching.
Absolutely. That's a great question, Sean. I'm glad you brought that one up. Learn to hate leg. So when you look at a prospective animal and bring onto your farm, you're looking at that cow standing out there. If you can open up a full-size newspaper, open it up and hold it under that cow, and it doesn't touch the ground on the belly or on the ground, the newspaper, you've got way too much leg on that animal. The shorter the legs are on the animal, the bigger the gut. We got to have big gut. And these mainstream genetics today, they've bred all the gut out of our cattle. And that's because they want something to feed a lot of grain to. The bigger the gut, you can hold more grass. It takes a lot of grass to grow an animal. If they don't have a big gut on them, guess what happens to them in the wintertime? They get thin. They look like they've been in a POW camp by March because they don't have any gut. So learn to love gut. A thick chest on your animals, a nice wide butt, especially on the cows. The cows need a good wide butt. You don't want a skinny butt on your cow because she's got to push a calf out there. And if she's got a skinny butt, she doesn't have any room to put the calf out.
There's a song called Baby Got Back for cows. It might be appropriate with that. Is there some breeds? Can you name some breeds that fit that criteria that you're talking about? The big belly, the big back,
Yeah, there's a few out there. Of course, I have to be prejudiced. I love South Pole. That's the cows we run. They are specially designed for grass. Matter of fact, it's in our bylaws of the South Pole organization. You cannot show a South Pole cow in any show in the United States. It's illegal. You can't do it. And the reason we put that in there is we did not want show judges dictating where this breed goes, because I know where it's going to go. If you have show judge, guys, you got to get them bigger. Got to get them bigger. Next thing you know, you got 1,800 pound South Poles out there, and they're just like every other breed. If you live where it's hot and humid, get a red cow. Don't get a black one. And I think black where it's cold, up in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, black could be fine. But you sure don't want black in Alabama or even in parts of Missouri. It's 95 out here today, Sean, and it's hot. You got a black hair coat on an animal versus a red. It's huge. They put a thermometer on a red animal. The temperature that day was 105. The red animal was 108. The black animal was 138. Now, which one of those animals are going to do well on a hot day? The black animal is going to be underneath a tree or standing in a pond. The red animals can take the heat. Here's the other one. Go for slick hide. Go for oily, slick hides. If an animal has a slick, oily hide, perfect fly resistance, perfect for pest resistance. And they gain better. The more slicker the hide, the more the calf will gain. It's a proven deal. They're performing better on grass.
I think my understanding is most people in this country, and probably worldwide, that get into, whether it's livestock or even regular, farming of any type, usually have that in their background. They grow up around that. Their parents were farmers, their grandparents were farmers, multi-generational stuff. What has been the success rate for the knucklehead that says, I'm an engineer and I'm going to hang it up, or I'm an old doctor, I'm going to hang it up? How successful have those people been in doing this stuff? Because obviously there's a learning curve and there's type of thing, but can you take somebody who's got no clue about agriculture and turn them into somebody that's not only you know, doing okay, but doing very successful. Is that possible?
Sean, those make the best. Believe it or not, those folks make the best. You know why? They don't have any preconceived notions. They're like a sponge. They soak up everything that they can read and hear. We have people come to our grading school every year, and they don't own any animals. They don't have any land. They've never owned an animal in their life, but they want to learn the correct techniques. And I would recommend that, because the quickest way to make a small fortune in livestock is to start with a large one. Okay. I'm serious. You can go through a lot of money. You get the wrong animals, the wrong water system, the wrong fence. You buy a bunch of compromised animals. They get out, they're snotty, they're mean, they try and kill you, whatever. Or you buy a bunch of stuff you don't need. And that's the problem most people do. They go out. I went on a farm, a guy spent over $500,000 on a handling facility. A corral. It was ridiculous. You could have built the same thing for $400. Well, let's say 1,000 cattle panels and some posts. He spent $500,000. You can't do that. You can't do that and survive unless you're Bill Gates or Warren Buffett. You got tons of money, but yeah.
Yeah, I like that thing about making the large fortune into the small one. Hey, do you see, and speaking of that, I mean, I was at a conference presenting at a nutrition conference, and we had some ranchers out there that are, and the nice thing is we're starting to see more of these producers interacting with the people that are consuming their product with regard to health. And we're, like I said, it's a healthy food. We should, I spoke at U.S. Cattlemen's Association a couple of years ago, and I was trying to convince the cattle producers that they are actually selling a healthy product, because they've been so brainwashed to thinking that meat is bad for you, red meat is bad for you, saturated fat, the whole 9 yards. But one of the things I ran into was a guy talking about, they're using satellite imagery to help with planning grazing routes. Is that something that you think is useful, or is that just one of those unnecessary expenses? Or because, I mean, obviously, Alan Savory's, when you ask Alan Savory a question, you don't get a straight answer. He says it's management. That's basically his answer. And it's like, well, what does that mean, Al? It just depends. So do you see that? Do you see some? I mean, where do you see growth in this area from either? I mean, obviously more people doing it, but from a technological standpoint, and maybe from an incentive standpoint, because I know there are people talking about carbon credits and legislation going that way. So can you talk to me about? Is there some technology that even improves upon what you're doing that's cost effective? And then where do you see legislatively, inroads where this could be the preferred method for most ranchers rather than the commercialized, industrialized system that we now have?
Well, Sean, I get emails every day. I can't tell you how many emails I get from people that are retiring. They've been in the industrial model. They've been working in a town. Maybe they used to go out on their grandpa's farm when they were a little boy, and they always had this love to return to the land. And it's really chewing on them. And I had a guy the other day say, Greg, I just want to do something real before I die. He told me that. And he said, I want to grow good food for my family. And he said, I want to raise my kids to know what it's like to be out in the country, get good morals, have a country life, learn to appreciate life, the soil, the animals, where meat comes from. It doesn't come out of the back of a grocery store. And people believe that, it doesn't come from a cow. It comes from it comes from that store. And so I think there's a lot of room here for growth, simply because there's a ton of people that want to do this. I'm telling you, it's growing, and there's a lot of people out there, especially with this virus thing. They're like, you know what? We've got to raise our own meat. We got to take responsibility for feeding our families. And there's a lot to be said for that. Food security. I mean, if you are tied down to buying the meat at the supermarket and it's not there's nothing in the shelf, what are you going to do? Well, if you got a freezer in your back porch that's full because you just butchered you got a half a steer in there and a half a pig and maybe a lamb. That's food security. And I think people are interested in that. People have gotten scared that they're not going to have food. And to me, in this industry or in life, if you got a motorboat, the fastest motorboat in the world, but your gut is empty and it's chewing on your rib cage, that boat doesn't mean nothing. You got to have food. And food starts with meat. healthy meat grown off of land. Shawn, we're in the best business in the world, and I'll tell you why. It's regenerative. It uses sunlight from the leaves of green plants. It collects that, and we grow healthy meat from it. And at the same time, that animal's growing a baby inside itself every year. It's regenerative. I mean, you can't get any better than that. We don't have to go here and buy a bunch of stuff. Just move a wire and make sure they have water, and the animal's going to feed you and your family and your community.
Yeah, a couple great points in there. One is, when we look at how wealth used to be described, how many cattle do you have? A lot of cultures was the guy that had the most cattle was the king or the wealthiest dude. I mean, that's definitely the case. To your point about doing something meaningful, I do a lot of consultations with people trying to improve their health, and I not infrequently actually have other physicians coming to me on how to get healthy because they don't know. Most doctors are clueless. And I had a surgeon the other day, and he was talking about, he's being frustrated with doing surgery, and he wasn't that old. He was maybe 40. And I was talking, well, you can step away from that and do more of a lifestyle model and, kind of treat patients, without, like I was a surgeon. I stopped doing surgery because I just felt I could help more people with just nutrition. But he said, no, I don't even want to do that. I want to start my own ranch. And I gave him your name, and I said, hey, go look up Greg Judy. I know he helps people with this. But when you're talking about doing something meaningful, and now Phil is in the quick chat because I know Phil he's already starting a ranch, so I know he wants to do some ranching.
Right.
And he's asking, because you said go where the rain is. So can you give me maybe, if you had to say top 3 places in the U.S. to do this, given climate, temperature, and rainfall, where would you direct somebody if they wanted to go buy land? If they had the cash and they could say I can buy wherever I want, where would you like? I know you're in Missouri, so you might be partial there, but where would you, if you had to move from Missouri, or pick me two or three other places you'd go?
Okay, if I had to move from Missouri, where would I go? Just kidding, Shawn. I'd go to New Zealand, but I'll back off of that. New Zealand's a beautiful place, but they don't want us over there. You can go visit, but they want you to leave. Beautiful place, though. But it is. If I had to leave Missouri and go somewhere else, I'd be looking at possibly, I don't know, Tennessee, Kentucky, maybe northern Arkansas, eastern Kansas, southern Iowa. Here's the deal. You can't go where they row crop. You can't set up a grazing operation where they row crop. And that's because the row croppers are going to bid you out of that ground. When you're getting, let's say, $8,000 to $9,000 an acre for land, and people laugh at me when I say that, because other places it's a lot higher than that. You can't set up a grazing operation on $10,000 an acre land. It's just not feasible. And so, southern Missouri, they've got land down there if you get in the right area. Get away from a population center, you're still looking at somewhere around $2,000 to $2,500 an acre. Now we're talking. But for me, Shawn, the way we've built our business is it's leased land, and I wrote a book about it. It's called Custom Grazing on Leased Land, and it's no risk. No risk ranching is the name of the book. Well, I didn't have any risk, so I was leasing other people's land, and that's how we built our business. There's a lot of folks out there today that have land, they don't know what to do with it. And if you'll learn to graze and get animals out there and do what we're doing on our place, and you can show them a place like mine, you might get that lease. And it's not going to be very costly. I mean, we've got 4 leases. We don't pay them anything. It's a free lease, and that's because of our land business. We take the land and we make it better, a lot better. It looks like a park when we're done.
Yeah, that's a great comment. Yeah, somebody was commenting on the fact that you do leasing, and I think Joel Salatin also talks about that. Where there's a lot of land out there. What about places? You said you can't do row crop, but I mean there's this concept of cover crop. Animals eating on cover crops. How does that fit into your scheme, or does it?
Cover crops are great for turning land around. So if you had a piece of ground that had been cropped and cropped and cropped, and finally the crop man walked away from it because he couldn't raise any crops on it. The land was that broken. If I was going to try and convert that back to grass, probably the first thing I'd do is I would get something growing on it, and then I'd bring the livestock on immediately. Get the animals out there. You need the biology from manure. You need that cloven hoof trampling on the ground. Wake up the microbes, get the earthworms going. You can't turn it around without animals. And you'll hear Savory say this, it's the only tool we have left to reverse desertification. It's the animal. And if we take the animals off the land, Shawn, we are in deep trouble. I mean, deep trouble. So we can't do that.
Yeah, and you'd have to be asleep to not or living under a rock to realize there are a lot of people that want that to happen. There's a lot of industry and money being invested in these alternative meat products. These
it's ridiculous.
Synthetic
it's
meats,
ridiculous,
and they seem to ignore the fact that the land is we're going to need some land to grow stuff. And I know there's people saying that the soil is going to run out. When it is, it's who knows for sure. Obviously, there's a degenerative type of ranching, and or agriculture where you till the land and you basically nuclear bomb it, kill everything that's on there so you can grow your soybean or your monocrop. And then there's also, I think, the fair criticism that people had of people let, when you turn, like you said, the Columbus method, where you just let animals out there and graze and graze and graze, and they eat it down to bare dirt. That also isn't sustainable. So like I said, from my outsider view, I think it's clear what we should be doing and where we're focusing. Are you seeing, and I mentioned this, but we didn't discuss this. Are you seeing any hope coming out of our government in legislating things that are going to make this more feasible for most ranchers, or are you not holding your breath on that? Yep, we might have lost him. I don't know. Well, guys, I don't know what happened to him. Anyway, but I think that was quite an informative interview. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Take care. I will see many of you guys back tomorrow. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your weekend, okay? Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.